Quick demo of this video tutorial. In this video, we will discuss how to implement role-based authorization in ASP.NET Core and Angular 7 using ASP.NET Core Identity. We will discuss things like how to implement role-based authorization in ASP.NET Core Web API using Identity Role. We will use Auth Interceptor and Auth Guard to implement role-based authorization in Angular 7. And finally, we will discuss how to create private routes in Angular 7 such that we can restrict a specific route only for few roles. I hope you will find this tutorial helpful for your upcoming projects, so please watch till the end of this video tutorial. Before starting this video, I would like to ask you a favor. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please be subscribed to this channel and click on the bell icon to get notification about my new videos. Most of the video lesson here also has a written blog post. You can find the link in video description. You can grab code from there as well. What's up YouTube? Welcome to CodAffection. In this video, I will show you how to implement role-based authorization or authentication in ASP.NET Core Web API with Angular 7. In previous two tutorials, we have been discussing user registration and JWT user authentication, login and logout in ASP.NET Core Web API and Angular 7. As a continuation to those two videos, here we have the role-based authorization in ASP.NET Core Web API with Angular 7. If you have not watched that previous two tutorials, I have given the link in video description. Please watch that first and then continue with this video. Before getting into this topic, I would like to thank for your PayPal donations for my previous works. In order to make more helpful and quality tutorials like this, you can support me through PayPal donation. I have given the donation link in first comment and video description. Without further ado, let's get started. So here we have the ASP.NET Core Web API project, and here we have the Angular 7 project from previous JWT user authentication lesson. Both of these applications are running inside the browser here. Now we have to update these projects for role-based authorization using ASP.NET Core Identity. So first of all, I want to show you how to add a role for a user using ASP.NET Core Identity. For user registration, we have already designed a form which was discussed in our first video. So here we have the user registration or sign up form. So when we submit this form, corresponding user details will be inserted into our ASP.NET Core Identity table. Along with that, we have to assign a role for the particular user. So first of all, we have to have some roles for different types of user inside this application. For that, here we have the database, user DB. Inside that, you can see few tables related to ASP.NET Core Identity. Inside this table, ASP.NET roles, we can insert roles for different types of user inside this application. So let me add few roles inside this table. So right click on the table, then edit top 200 rows. So first of all, we have admin, ID will be 1, then name will be admin. Same can be copied into this normalized name column here. After that, we have to insert a new role for customer. Let me copy this and pasting inside this normalized column. So here we have two roles inside this application, admin and customer. Now let's look how we can assign any of the role for a particular user when we submit this user registration form here. As per the first video, when we submit this form, it will invoke this Web API method here inside this application user controller post application user. Inside the method, we will insert new user into the database. Now let's check how we can assign any of these two roles for a particular user. For that, different applications have different approach. For example, if you want to create an admin user, you will have a secure form to create a admin for the application, and in case of user with customer role, you will have some public form like this. Or you can handle all of these situations in a single form by adding a select control, populating all the roles from the table here. So when user select admin, we will create an admin user. When user select customer role, corresponding user will have customer role. Since we have different approaches to create different types of user based on user role privilege, I'm going to simplify the process. For now, inside this post web API method here, I'm going to set manually different roles for different user. So inside this post web API method parameter, we have to pass role for that particular user. So inside this model class here, I'm going to create a new property which is of the type string, and I will name this property as role. In practical example, you have to pass the value of this role from this form submission itself. For that, you might have a different form for different role, or you can have a single drop down to select different roles from the application. In order to simplify this process, I just want to provide the role manually here. So I will do this model dot role is equal to customer. In order to create the user, we have called this function create async from this underscore user manager property. After that, we have to assign the role for newly created user. For that, we can do this. First of all, we have the avoid keyword, then underscore user manager. We can call this function add to role async function. First of all, we have to pass the object application user. After that, we have to pass the role, which is here model dot role. So this is what we can do to assign a particular role for a given user. Now, in order to work this approach, we have to add corresponding class implementation identity role into this application. For that, we can go to this startup class here. Inside that, we have already added few packages here. Along with this entity framework store, we have to add identity role also. So this is what we need to do. Add roles function can be called. It is of the type identity role. In order to reflect these new changes inside the running instance, let's build this solution once again. After successful build, back to this Angular application here, let me insert a new user 123, then password will be 1234 1234. This user will have the role customer, since we have assigned that manually here, customer. So in order to identify the user with role from username itself, I will append the role here, customer. Now let's submit the form. So here we have successfully created the user 123 customer. Let's check how it is inserted into the DB here. First of all, we have the ASP.NET users table. Inside that, we should have a record for newly created user. So here we have the new user 123 customer. Now, in order to see the corresponding role assigned to this user, we can check that here inside this table ASP.NET user roles. First of all, we have the column user ID. So it should be similar to this one here. It ends with 103E. So here we have the corresponding same user ID. And here we have the role ID as 2. So inside this ASP.NET roles table, we have given ID as 2 for this customer role. So that is what we can see here. Now let's create one more user with role admin. For that, I will update this hard-coded role here. Instead of customer, we have admin. Let's build this project again. Then back to this user registration form here, I will create a new user 123. Corresponding role will be admin. So I will append this string admin here. Then password will be 1234 1234. Submit the form. So here we have created the user. Let's check that inside this table. Let me execute this select star statement again. So here we have the new user 123 admin. Let me check corresponding role for that new user here. So here we have the corresponding ID, and here we have the role ID as 1, which is for admin here. So here we have created new user, one for customer role and one for admin role. Now let's check how to implement role-based authorization using ASP.NET Core Identity. So it should start from JWT user authentication itself. So here we have the corresponding web API method here, login. Inside this Angular application here we have the corresponding login form here. So when we submit this form, login form, it will post data into this post web API method here, login for JWT user authentication. Now we have to update this web API method in order to assign corresponding role for that user into this user claims here. So first of all, here we have the if clause. This if clause will be executed if there is a user with given credentials, username and password. Inside that, first of all, we will check for roles assigned to this user. So first of all, we have to get the role assigned to the user. For that, I will create a new variable role, and we can fetch corresponding user role like this. A void keyword can be used here, underscore user manager dot get roles. Async function can be called. Inside that, we can pass this user object here, user. Now inside this variable, we have the corresponding role for that particular user. Now we can set the corresponding role inside this user claims here. So let me add one more claim here. New claim function can be called. As a first parameter, we have to pass the role claim. For that, I'm going to define one more variable here, identity options. Identity options. Inside that, we have different registered claims inside ASP.NET identity. I will name this as options is equal to new identity options, and here we can use corresponding registered claim for role. So underscore options dot claims identity property can be accessed. Inside that, we have this claim type role. Into this, we can pass the role that we have fetched here. So we can do this role dot first or default function can be called here. So here we have stored corresponding user role into role claim. Now let's look how we can implement the actual role-based authorization. For that, I'm going to add few get web API methods inside this user profile controller here. All of the new web methods will be of the type HTTP GET. In order to access this web API method, corresponding user should be authenticated. So we can add this authorize attribute like we have done in previous video. Along with that, in order to access this particular web API method, corresponding user should have the role admin. So we can set this roles is equal to admin. So inside this roles property, we can set one or more roles who has the privilege to access this web API method here. If you have more than one role, you can separate them with a comma in between them. And we have to set the corresponding route here. So route, inside that we can set this for admin. So function definition will be something like this: public string. I will name this web method as get for admin. From this web API method, we just need to return a string. It will be something like this: web method for admin. Like this, we have to create two more web API methods. So let me copy this and pasting below that 2 times. So in order to access the second web API method here, corresponding user should have this role customer. I will change this route here. It will be something like this for customer. Corresponding web API method will be something like this, get for customer. And from this web API method, we will return web method for customer. And this last web method can be accessed for users who has any of these two roles, customer or admin. In this application, we only have two roles, admin and customer. In your application, you might have any number of roles. So in that case, if you want to restrict a web method for few rows from the roles table, you can do this. So I will change the route here for admin or customer. I will change this web method name here for admin or customer. I will change this string also, web method for admin or customer. Let me build this project. In order to check the working of this application, I'm going to use this application here, Postman. So here we already have this post web API method requires to log in a particular user. So here we have the corresponding URI. I'm going to try both of the user that we have created, one for customer and one for admin. So first of all, let me try the user for customer. Corresponding user name is user123 customer, then password will be 1234. Send this request. So here we have successfully authenticated inside this application and corresponding JWT token is here. Now let's try to access this web API method here. So first of all, let me try this web API method of the type get for admin. So let me add one more tab here. It will be of the type get, then corresponding URI will be something like this. Let me copy this and pasting here. So we have to use this URI, user profile / for admin, user profile for admin. Since we have authorized attribute here, we have to pass corresponding JWT token along with this request. So go to this tab here, authorization, then we have to select this type bearer token, and here we have to pass the corresponding token that we have received here. Let me copy this and paste that here. Send this request. 403 forbidden. That means authentication is successful, but authorization is failed because we don't have the role admin. In order to access this web API method, we should have this role admin. Now let's try this web API method here for customer. For that, let me duplicate this tab here. Instead of this URI here, I will use for customer. Inside this authorization tab, we should have the same token. Now let's try this request. So here we have the response status 200 OK, and here we have the response web method for customer. So we can access this web API method since we have this role customer for this particular user. Now let's try the last web API method here. For that, let's duplicate this tab here. Corresponding URI will be something like this for admin or customer. So let me copy this. Then back to the application here. I will paste that here. Send this request. So here we have the success response with status code 200 OK. Now let's try the same with admin user. So corresponding username will be user123 admin. Let's make this request. So here we have the corresponding JWT token. Let me copy this, and we just need to update that inside this authorization tab here. So inside this tab, we are going to make the request into this web API method here for admin. So this should be successful since this user have this role admin. Send this request. So here we have the success response. Now let's try that inside this for customer request. Let's update this token, send this request. So this request is failed, 403 forbidden because we don't have the role customer. Now let's try the last web API method. Let's update this token, send this request. So here we have the success response because in order to access this last web API method, we need either admin or customer role. So here we have done with role-based authorization inside ASP.NET Core Web API project. Now let's check how to implement role-based authorization inside the Angular 7 application from previous tutorial project. So here we have the same Angular 7 project from previous tutorial. In order to demonstrate the working of role-based authorization in Angular 7 application, let me add one more component inside this application. Currently we have this application structure here. I want to add one more admin panel component into this application. So first of all, let me update this application structure. I will copy these two lines, then I will paste that here. Instead of home component, we have to create admin panel component. Corresponding component name will be admin-panel. So here we have updated application structure. In order to create the corresponding component, we have to use this Angular CLI command ng g4 generate c4 component, and we have to create admin panel component. In order to skip the creation of test file with extension spec.ts, we have to reset this flag spec. And in order to skip the creation of component specific style sheet, we have to specify this flag $s. Now hit enter. Newly created component can be seen inside this src folder here, admin panel. Inside this component HTML file, we have this default paragraph admin panel works. Now this component is only for admin users. If users without admin role try to access this component, we have to redirect the user into some another component saying you are not allowed to access this component, 403 forbidden status. Okay, so in order to show that specific message, I'm going to create a separate component. So let me update this application structure again. Let me copy these two lines from here, then I will paste that below, and I will name this component as forbidden, so that we can show this component whenever users without admin role try to access this admin panel. Corresponding component name will be forbidden. Let me copy this and pasting below that. Now we have to create the component. For that, we can reuse the command that we have executed here. Instead of admin panel component, we have to create forbidden component. Forbidden. Hit enter. So here we have the corresponding component forbidden, and corresponding HTML file is here. Instead of this default paragraph, I want to show some message, something like you don't have the permission to access this component. I have prepared corresponding HTML for one of my previous videos, so I will reuse that here. Let me get rid of this default paragraph from here, and then I will paste that here. So here we have the bootstrap card element. Inside that, first of all, we have the image 403.png. We have to add this image into this assets folder here. So corresponding image is in my desktop. Let me drag that into this folder here, assets img folder. Below this image, we have shown this text 403 access denied, and we have this paragraph saying you don't have the permission to access this resource. Now we have to configure routing for role-based authorization. For that, here we have the routing module, app routing module. Here we have to add two more routes for forbidden component and admin panel component. So let me copy this and pasting below that 2 times. This is for forbidden component. So forbidden will be the corresponding path, then corresponding component will be forbidden. I want to make this route as public, so I can remove this can activate array with auth guard. After that we have admin panel. Corresponding component will be admin panel. In order to access this route, we should be authenticated inside the application, so I can keep this can activate array with auth guard. Along with that, in order to access this particular route, the corresponding user should have the role admin. So we have to specify that inside this route here. For that, I will add one more property here, data. Inside that, we can pass an object with a single property, permitted roles. Inside that, we can specify the corresponding role admin. Now we have to verify whether a user has particular role which is required to access or consume current route. That we can do inside this auth guard can activate function here. Inside this function here we have the if clause. Inside that we will check whether the current user is authenticated or not by checking corresponding token in local storage. Inside that we can verify whether the current user has required permission roles. For that, first of all, I will declare a new variable let roles, and we have to store the required roles to access the current route. That we can retrieve like this. Next, data. Inside this data property, we will have the object that we have specified inside corresponding route. Okay. From this array, we have to retrieve this property permitted roles. Let me copy this and pasting here. And we have to cast this as array of strings. Now I will add one more if clause to check whether current route demand any roles. For that, we can check this roles property here. If there is any role which is required to access the current route, that we can handle inside this if clause here. Now inside this if clause, we have to check whether current user has all of the roles required to access the particular route. In order to check this condition, I will define one more function inside this user service class here. It will be role match. I have already prepared this function for one of my previous videos, so I will just paste that here. So here we have the function role match. It has a single parameter allowed roles, which are the roles which is to be required to access the current route. Okay, and inside this function, first of all, we will reset this property isMatch as false, and here we have the payload property. Inside this ASP.NET Core Web API project, while authenticating a user, we have stored that particular user role inside this claim here, role claim. So this subject or this payload will be sent along with the JWT token into the client side. So in order to retrieve that particular role, we can do this. So inside this local storage token, we have the full token, JWT token, and we will split that JWT token with period symbol. So in total, in a JWT token, we will have 3 parts. First of all, we will have the header, payload, and signature. So this will return an array containing 3 elements, and we have to retrieve the second element, which is the payload. For that, we have used index 1. That payload will be encoded, and we have to decode that. For that, we have used this window.atob function, and in order to convert that into a JSON object, we have called this parse function from JSON. Okay, so inside this we have the payload. So in order to retrieve the currently logged in user roles, we can access this role property. Since we have stored that here like this role type, it will be stored inside this role property in our JSON web token. Inside this for each loop, we will iterate through the allowed roles array Inside that, we will check whether the current user has the allowed roles. If the user has particular role, this function will return true, otherwise it will return false. So inside this auth guard function, we can add one more if clause. Inside this, we have to call this function role match from user service class. So first of all, I have to inject that particular class here, private service, which is of the type user service. And here we can do this dot service dot role match function can be called. Inside that, we have to pass this array roles. Let me copy this and pasting here. If it returns true, then corresponding user has the required roles to access the current route. In that case, we can return true from here. Inside the else part, we have to handle forbidden status code for node 3. For that, we just need to redirect the user into forbidden route. So we can do this dot router dot navigate function can be called. Inside that, we have to provide the corresponding route forbidden. Finally, we will return false. Now we have to do one more thing inside this auth interceptor. Inside this error callback function, we have handled this status code for node 1 unauthorized. Along with that, we have to handle this status code for node 3 also. So we can do this error dot status is equal to for node 3. In that case, we just need to redirect the user into forbidden route. So let me copy this statement and pasting here. Instead of this route, we have forbidden. So here we have done with role-based authorization. Finally, we have to do one more thing. Inside this home component, we should have to have one link for admin panel so that admin users can access that route. For that, along with this logout button here, I will add one more link inside this unordered list here. So here we have the hyperlink, which can be used for admin users. If any user without admin role try to access this particular route, we have to show this forbidden component HTML. Let's check if it works as expected. For that, first of all, we have to save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application here. So let me try to log in with admin user. So corresponding username will be user123 admin. Then password will be 1234. Submit the form. So here we have successfully authenticated inside this application. Let me try to access this admin panel route. So here we can see the default text from that component. Then back to the home component. Let me log out from this application. Now let's try to log in with customer user. So user123 customer. Password will be 1234. Submit the form. Now let's try to access this admin panel. Boom. Since current user does not have the role admin, we are redirected into forbidden component. Here we have the message for node 3 access denied. You don't have the permission to access this resource. So this is how role-based authorization works in ASP.NET Core and Angular 7 application. So that's it guys. In this video we have discussed how to implement role-based authorization with ASP.NET Core identity. You can download this project source code from the link given below in video description. I would like to extend this application with more features. If you have any suggestion, you can comment that below in video description. In order to make more helpful and quality tutorials like this, you can support me through PayPal donations. I have given the link in first comment and video description. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.